Nerd alert! Learning is important, right?
Yes, exactly. What a bunch of nerds.
Nerd alert!
Right.
Marketing Architects.
Hello, and welcome to the Marketing Architects, a research-first podcast dedicated to answering your toughest marketing questions. I'm Lena Jasper. I run the marketing team here at Marketing Architects, and I'm joined by my co-host, Rob Demars, the Chief Product Architect of Misfits and Machines.
Hey, Elena.
Hello, we're back with your weekly Nerd Alert. Every week, I'll take a deep dive into academic marketing research and translate its complex ideas into simple, understandable language for Rob. And of course, for all of you, are you ready to nerd out, Rob?
I've graphed my nerd enthusiasm, and the curve is exponential, Elena.
Happy to hear it. Let's get into it. As always, we'll link the research we cover in the episode notes. This week, I read a study titled Examining Older Consumers' Loyalty Towards Older Brands in Grocery Retailing. This is from Pei-Ling Pa, Rachel Kennedy, Zhang Tren, Bill Page, and Byron Sharp, all for the University of South Australia, published in the Journal of Retailing and Consumer Services in 2020. So we got to be careful how we cover this study. It must be accurate considering these researchers. But before I get into it, Rob, I wanted to ask you this. What's your gut instinct? Do you think older consumers are more loyal to older brands than younger shoppers?
I have to ask the question, what is older? Because I'm old. What do they mean by older? So I'm going to go with my own focus group of one here since I am older. I've grown up my whole life inundated with options. And for sure, I feel like I am more loyal to those brands than probably younger people are. Younger folks seem more finicky and value conscious, or at least I'm just thinking of my own kids in their 20s. So yeah, I feel like older people just who didn't grow up with the finicky nature of social media where everything kind of flip in a day, that we're more loyal. I'm going with older because I'm older. I feel like I'm probably more loyal to brands than like my kids are.
In the study, they defined older consumers as those aged 55 and over. Does that change anything for you?
Well, I'm 51, so yeah, no, I'm sticking with it.
Okay.
Sticking with it, Elena.
Well, you're wrong.
Damn it.
So this study, well, we'll talk about it. This study, it digs into this belief that might feel intuitively true, but might not hold up under scrutiny. Do older consumers mostly stick with the old brands they've always known? Do they really just keep buying Tide, Dove, Heinz out of habit or nostalgia? This study puts that idea to the test. They used real purchase data from over 88,000 grocery trips across 60 brands in 6 categories. This had a wide range of categories from deodorant, dog food, to shampoo and sauces. And instead of asking people what they remembered buying, which can get fuzzy, they used actual panel data from single-person households. That way they could track purchase frequency, brand loyalty, and shopper age with precision. And then they compared how often each age group bought different brands, whether older people were more loyal to older brands, and whether older brands had older user bases. And they even adjusted for how long each brand had been in market relative to the shopper's age. So a brand could be older for a 25-year-old, but still newer to someone over 70. And they found that older shoppers don't actually prefer older brands, which is kind of surprising. I probably would have thought the same thing. Rob, older consumers, they don't buy older brands more often than younger consumers. In fact, they behaved like everybody else. They bought a mix of brands. Bigger brands got bought more often, and loyalty had more to do with brand size than age. There's a little double jeopardy law in action there. They also found that older brands didn't have noticeably older customer bases. The customer profiles across brands, old or new, looked remarkably similar, regardless of consumer age. So despite common stereotypes, the data shows that older people try new brands, older brands don't have a lock on older buyers, and everyone shops from a repertoire of brands, not just one. Even though older consumers, they've had decades of exposure to old brands and probably grew up with some of them, they'll still switch it up. The study suggests that older brands can't rely on familiarity alone. They have to stay relevant, visible, and competitive, just like newer ones. So the idea that older shoppers are set in their ways isn't just outdated, it's probably costing marketers valuable reach if they assume that new brands won't land with that audience. So Rob, this study looked at older consumers' grocery trips, or I guess just consumers' grocery trips in general. Do you think these findings apply to every category?
I don't think that the grocery store has any kind of exclusivity to consumer choice. I guess that'd be my gut. I feel like this would apply to cars. It would apply to clothing. But I am surprised. I think that's a really interesting study because I really would have thought that older folks have become pretty brand loyal by the time they get over the 50-year-old line and would be loyal to the brands that have served them in the past. So that very interesting study.
I was interested in this question because I could see that objection coming up, like, oh, well, this just has to do with grocery brands. But the findings do apply to other categories. And I did some of my own research to find some other studies that back this up across a wide range of product categories, from everyday items to big ticket services and financial products. And to just give a few examples, in 2006, Uncles and Lee did a study on financial services and credit cards. So they looked at credit card usage and brand loyalty with different age groups. They used a modeling approach called the Dirichlet model, which we've heard of before. It's great for capturing real world buyer behavior, and they found no significant age-based preferences for older financial brands. Again, older consumers were just as likely to have a mix of cards from newer and older providers. Research has also looked into cars and durable goods. Lambert, Pandrad, and Laurent in 2005 found that older adults bought more established car brands, but that was based on self-reported data and single categories. More recent work has actually challenged that. So in 2010, Anderson and Sharp had a broader study, and they argued that idea is overstated. So even in cars, older consumers still buy newer brands of durable goods. They just do it less frequently, like everyone else in low frequency categories. And then there was a massive study in 2012 that looked at 25 years of data across 50 product and service categories from shampoo to insurance, and they found this consistent pattern. User profiles for competing brands hardly differ by age. So the average age of a brand's customer base isn't meaningfully different, even for newer versus older brands, which means older people are not stuck on legacy brands, even in categories like electronics, personal care, or retail services. So across all these different categories, the pattern mostly holds. Older consumers do not show a consistent preference for older brands. That means that newer brands shouldn't write them off, which we see a lot. Older brands also can't assume they're going to stick around without staying competitive, which I think probably lends itself towards this idea of reaching broad audiences and how important that is.
I'm sure this isn't a nuance that is trying to be expressed in the study, but one question that comes to mind is, if I'm an older consumer and I'm brand new to a category, am I more loyal to the brand that has demonstrated they've been around the block versus a newer brand in the category if I'm new to the category as an older person? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does. I would think, and I'm not sure if this is part of the study, I don't remember, but I would think that familiarity would matter, because familiarity matters to making purchases. So if there's you have some mental availability of the brand, you're probably
right. It's a good point. At least you're going in with some perceived, even though you haven't participated in the category before, you've known of the brand through happenstance. Yeah.
Yeah. I would think it's about what's visible to you. Where's your mental availability? But I think this study is saying that they're not necessarily entering a new category. They don't necessarily have this just built-in preference because a brand's been all around for a long time. It matters much more what has been recently in their heads.
Cool.
Okay, Rob GPT. Imagine your brand preferences are like your closet. Sure, there are a few classic pieces you've had for years. That doesn't mean you never add new stuff. You buy what fits, what's available, and what catches your eye. It's not frozen in time like a museum exhibit or a sealed time capsule. And that's how older consumers behave. They don't just stick to what they know. They update their brand choices just like anyone else based on what's relevant, useful, and visible today. So I like this study because I think all the time you hear marketers where they have a very specific demographic that they're selling their product or service to. And yes, I understand sometimes your specific product is for an age demo. It doesn't make sense to go beyond it. However, you could argue about influencers and who else could inspire the product.
Absolutely. Secondary audiences.
Yeah, but I think we talk a lot about how older consumers can be sort of left out of advertising. This just shows they're not stuck in their ways. They're open to trying your brand. You just have to get in front of them. That's it for this episode of The Marketing Architects. We'd like to thank Taylor De Los Reyes for producing the show. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, and if you like the podcast, please leave us a review. Now go forth and build great marketing.
Marketing Architects.